see there's a discourse happening. Is this book a masterpiece or problematic? One's a lifelong diehard fan, the other's a first-time reader. Both are really smart and funny and attractive. Sweet feather, sweet feather, talking trends and hierarchy. Sweet feather, sweet feather, relentless focus on their body. Sweet feather, sweet feather, what do they mean by all American? Sweet feather, sweet feather, no sex, just titillation. Now that we're through, feeling better 'cause I'm over you. I learned my lesson and left a scar. Now I see how you really are. You're no good, you're no good, you're no good. Baby, you're no good. I'm gonna say it again. You're no good, you're no good, you're no good. Baby, you're no good.
An interesting song choice, Pardo, because I would say certainly you are good. What a day.
Happy Valentine's Day.
Right
Happy
on.
Galentine's Day to us.
Happy Valentine's Day to us and to our listeners as well. May you find all the love that you want, and may it not kind of trap you in a cabin out in the woods or throw you in the back of a van, or just be kind of creepy in general. May your love be, you know, what you need.
And might I remind us of something that Gloria Steinem, I once read that she said, and it really stuck with me.
Mhm.
She said the most romantic night she ever had in her life. It was like she was with a bunch of girlfriends. It was like a warm summer evening or something. They were like sitting outside having dinner. I don't know if it was a restaurant or someone's home or whatever. And there was twinkling lights strung and there was amazing music and they danced and drank and laughed all night or whatever. And she's like, that feeling was like such the romance. And like you can have romance with friends. And I love that idea that of just romance is that delightful, tingly atmosphere, and it doesn't have to be necessarily romantic, quote unquote. So I
Great.
look forward to a very romantic record today.
I hope that we can cultivate that air of intrigue, care, concern, mystery, dare I say, that romance is known for.
I tell you what I'm stressed about though.
Always.
For the past 137 years, I'm obsessed with Alone in the Crowd. I'm obsessed with Alone in the Crowd. And I feel like that set you up to expect something like very interesting or wild or special or different about it, and that you waited for something that didn't come and that it was a disappointing experience for you. And I hope that, and I'm worried that I set your expectations wrong, when the truth is like, yes, I love this book, but it's just like, I personally love it. I personally connect to it, and it's very nostalgic for me from my childhood, and I just love it. And the Linda Ronstadt of it all, and I just love this book. But like, I hope you weren't disappointed, because it's just like sort of a regular, someone needs more confidence and then they get it book. But so that's what I'm stressed about.
Can I allay your fears?
Please. Because when I texted you and I was like, are you obsessed or are you addicted? You were like, ... no. You were like, ... not yet. And I was like, oh, does that mean they didn't start the book yet? Or it means they started, but they're not addicted yet? And I'm like, oh no, kill me, kill me.
So I know you're not necessarily going to receive this as a compliment, but I do mean it as a compliment. This book was basic. And sometimes you need like a basic, no frills, Sweet Valley High. You know what I mean? Like, I really enjoyed, especially on the heels of some of the more complicated, intricate, the super editions, all of this stuff. Just have a book where it's like, yeah, there's one main plot, there's one B plot. You know what's going to happen at the beginning of the book, and then it happens. That's refreshing. And isn't that the greatest love of all? Simplicity? 'Tis a gift to be simple.
I guess we should do our 6-word reviews.
You want my 6 words? Because I don't have them yet.
I don't either. Yeah, let's think. Oh gosh, 6 words. How could I possibly? The cover's so good, you're gonna die.
Okay, I've got mine.
Hmm.
Masks and makeovers tell the truth.
Wow. Okay, I love, and I was very much on the same page of that. Like I was
Really?
gonna, oh my God, we're so cute. I was gonna be like, sometimes being anonymous or not saying who you are is the way that you actually reveal who you are. And it's that thing of like how RuPaul always says that drag reveals who you really are. Like drag reveals parts of your inner truth versus like being a costume, right? And of course, whatever. But yeah, beautiful. Not that this is necessarily a drag, but you know, we have of course a phantom songwriter.
Are you, which part of that was your 6 words, would you say?
Oh, that wasn't my 6 words. I was saying I was
Oh,
gonna. I
oh,
was
this is your
thinking that.
preamble. Sorry.
No, I was saying just how we were thinking on the same page, I think.
Love.
Because you talked about the mask and the makeover, and yet this is the truth. And yet, what does one become when one sort of lets one's mother take one to the silver door and have a little bit of a shampoo? Whew.
Ooh,
Let me think. All right, it's 7.
great. Classic.
A little shampoo goes a long way.
And don't we know it?
Period. Oh,
I
by the
love.
way, I mean, we'll get to it, but the B plot for this one is also so powerful for me nostalgia wise. And all these times I've been hinting at like Jessica has really good fundraising ideas and wait till you see how creative she gets. This is what I was thinking about, just so you know. But don't, and if you're rude about it, I'm gonna be really mad because you're laughing.
I'm gonna be just like saying this book is basic but meaning it as a compliment. I'm gonna be rude, but I'm gonna mean it as a compliment.
Do you want to guess the taglines?
Yes. Will Lynne always be on the outside?
Very good, but no.
Can Lynne overcome her shyness?
You're 97% there. Can Elizabeth help Lynn overcome her shyness?
Robert,
Yes.
when, you beautiful idiot,
You
when are you
beautiful,
going to remember
dumb
that
genius.
it's always about one of the twins? Can one of the twins fix this problem? It's never actually about the character the book is about. This is like, can Kara help Steve forget or whatever? It's always like.
And it's like we're at book 28 and it's like, I don't know when you're going to kind of.
No, I'm not. I think I've shown that I'm not willing to learn.
By the way, look at us being at book 28.
Look at us. And that doesn't even count, of course, the super editions.
Say
We're
that.
doing it.
It comes with the anxiety of, I don't want us to ever run out, but we still got a ways to go. And then we got university.
We've got
All
a
right.
board game. We've got a TV show.
In theory, there's twins, but that's, I mean,
Just slip
that's really a whole other thing.
I don't know what's on the back. It's wait.
Literally just like
Throw it
close
away.
your eyes and just just throw it away, close your eyes and just say.
Oh, wallflower, ...
Gorgeous. No. Secret song, ...
Secret song, ... I wish I had a time machine, and I know people are like, oh, would you kill Hitler or whatever? But it's like, no, I would go back in time and help them with the taglines. Secret song, ... is bad.
Secret
Capital B,
song.
bad.
What should it have been? What should it have been if we're so smart then? What would you have helped them? Okay. Put your money where your mouth is over here, please.
I would say finding her voice, ...
Bravo. Bravo, Robert. And that's why you are the one who's on Jeopardy.
And that's one of the two genders being on Jeopardy.
And I am the one who actually had a little bit of a stint at Oxford.
The other gender, of course.
Okay, are we ready for the cover?
I just want to say before we get started, I am nervous about the sensitivity with which
the chin. What's her chin gonna look like?
I mean, just the way that they're going to depict a quote unquote wallflower nerd. I'm very nervous because she said, listeners, in the text, and we'll get there maybe an hour 45. In the text, she is like canonically nerdy, bad hair, big glasses. I shudder to think what we're gonna get. But show me, please, if you're willing.
I was just gonna say I love this book. I was just gonna say I love this fucking book, and I do love the cover.
That's way better than I was expecting. So we have on the cover, on kind of a coral or pink background, we've got a frumpy, sad, nerdy girl who is so much looking down and resting her head on her hand. And we've got Liz behind her in a blue polo shirt. Liz, I think, is supposed to be looking concerned, but in my mind, she looks like she'd be saying, "Oh, sweetie," and kind of like a condescending concern. I'm just going to say, Lynne's cute. She's wearing big glasses, but I think she's like a very pretty girl.
She's a beautiful hipster, basically.
Yeah, I mean,
like the glasses are, first of all, it must be said.
it must be said.
They're like 1970s. What's the name of the American Apparel guy? The pervert.
Oh, gross. I know who you're talking about. He's a pervert.
The type of glasses he wore, or like I feel like Jeffrey Dahmer wore these kind of glasses.
Oh, yeah.
They're thick frame that's brown. What also I remember from this book is just the brownness of it all. Because first of all, the coloring on the front of the book, you know, of course, the colorway of the Sweet Valley High covers changes every book, and there are always these gorgeous color combos that I appreciate. And this one is so gorgeous. As Robert suggested, it's a peach and then brown. And so we have the lettering and the sort of trims of the thing in brown. And then Lynne has these thick brown glasses, this gorgeous mock neck, kind of exactly matching the lettering of the book, almost burgundy brown top. And I don't know if you saw this, but her hand is resting on her guitar and her hair is also brown. So it just sort of reinforces this. She has this feeling of being sort of like mousy, browny, like blah looking, but it's actually gorgeous. And like her hair, it's not frizzy. Her hair's great. It looks good. It's just sort of like tousled, just a casual, wavy, cool hair. And yeah, she's very pretty. Like,
yeah,
I don't know.
It's confusing. So I think I might be seeing this because I was already thinking about it. So I'm going to temper this with that. But have you ever seen the movie Ladybugs?
I don't think so.
It's Rodney Dangerfield and Jonathan Brandis, and he is a high school student. He's very good at soccer, and
I've seen the cover of it. I like saw it at the video store when I was a kid because I remember.
Yeah, it was I guess I would say inexplicably, but very explicably one of my favorite movies as a child. Very explicably because like the crux of the movie is this very cute blonde boy dresses like a girl and plays on the girls' soccer team. And so like obviously I liked it because he was cute and because there was like gender bendy stuff. Regardless, one of the big kind of things about the movie is this dorky girl who I think her name is Penny, has like big frizzy hair and glasses, and she's really into Jonathan Brandis. And then she takes off her glasses and lets down her hair, and suddenly she's beautiful. And I feel like this book is doing much of that work.
Yeah, it's a very famous, like, she's all that phenomenon. I think, and again, all of that obviously ripped off this book.
Yeah.
But like, I do think that's a central question that we must ask is, the book would have us maybe say it's a she takes off her glasses and now she's pretty and everything's good story, which does technically happen.
Yeah.
But I think it would behoove us to do some close textual analysis of some of the conversations she has with her mother around, you know, there are some nuances and complexities around sort of inner self-image and self-esteem and self-love and outer appearance and the relationship between them. And I think it would behoove us to look into what the actual message is. And I think it's, you know, it's a little bit, I think it's a little more nuanced.
Ladybugs was kind of the first moment for me that I had that kind of take down your hair, take off your glasses, you are beautiful all along kind of thing. And I do really see that in the text. I do think there is textual evidence that like Lynne's feelings that she wasn't pretty enough or that she wasn't good enough were all in her head. And throughout the text, we get messages that like other people around her see her basically as fine, in the same way that like Penny was beautiful in Ladybugs all along. Like, I feel like part of this
Yeah,
text
yeah, yeah,
is...
of course, yes.
Oh.
Sorry, not of course, but like, I agree with you in the sense that I think, yes, it is a quote unquote ugly duckling story, but part of that lesson, and I do think we should critique it, and it's, it's both and I think a little bit, but is telling us that it's the inner quote unquote beauty, which is the sort of positive self-image type of stuff that is then going to be reflected and matched on the outside when you get your makeover. So, but it'll be interesting for us to interrogate a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Should we plot summarize?
Yeah, I don't know if we need to do cliffhanger.
A flash of movement caught Elizabeth's eye. She turned and saw Lynne Henry once again, walking away from the bandstand. Instead of looking happy, however, Lynne now looked terribly depressed. Her head was down, and Elizabeth thought she saw the girl wipe a tear from her eye. Although Elizabeth didn't know Lynne well, she wondered if there was anything she could do to help her. "Lynne?" Elizabeth called out as the girl passed by. Her face streaked with tears. Lynne turned to look at Elizabeth, but instead of responding, Lynne started to run off into the crowd. Elizabeth made a move to follow, but then collected herself. She had made her gesture of friendship. Elizabeth had to respect Lynne's desire to be alone. As the Droids began to tune their instrument for the next song, Elizabeth wondered what it was that had made Lynne Henry so upset. It was strange that the girl didn't seem to have any friends. What made her so shy? The crowd began to cheer once more, but Elizabeth barely noticed. "It must be terrible," she thought, "to be in such a large group of people and not be friendly with anyone." Elizabeth's heart went out to the girl. Then and there, Elizabeth made a promise to herself. When she returned to Sweet Valley High on Monday, she would make an effort to get to know Lynne Henry a little bit better. Can Elizabeth help Lynne Henry overcome her shyness? Find out in Sweet Valley High number 28, Alone in the Crowd. So it does turn out that we have just stopped even getting creative at all on these taglines and have just taken the cliffhanger from the text before.
Yeah, well, it is what it is.
It is very much what it is. Shall we plutsu?
Yeah, why don't you take A, I'll take B.
Okay. The A plot is that we have a young woman named Lynne Henry who is very shy and very awkward, and her secret dream is to be a rock star and write music. But she's too shy and she could never go on stage or have people look at her. And the Droids are inexplicably having a song contest where they want to recruit a new songwriter from Sweet Valley High. Lynne enters the contest anonymously with her smash hit debut single, Outside Looking In. She wins the contest, but she's too afraid to come forward. She then gets a makeover, comes forward, everyone loves her. Concurrent with this is the fact that Lynne has a crush on Guy Chesney, the drummer for the Droids, question mark?
I think guitar,
Okay.
because Emily is the drummer.
Oh, Emily, of course, is the drummer. Robert. The Droids, Sweet. Hi.
Are you consulting your spreadsheet?
I wish.
What are you doing?
I was hoping that I could just Google the Droid Sweet Valley High.
Oh, I'm pretty sure he's like a lead guitarist.
Lead guitarist? Okay.
Potentially bass guitarist. He's definitely a guitarist, I think,
Okay.
or keyboard.
It doesn't matter. Sorry. She has a crush on him. They start walking to school together some, but she's too shy. She thinks he can never be interested. But then after the reveal of Outside Looking In as a song, Guy falls in love with the songwriter without knowing who it is, and then falls in love with Lynne once he does know who it is, and they're together.
Yeah, I think a key just component that you didn't make explicit is that the way they get people to enter the songs is through a cassette tape. So she records herself singing. So it's not like she sent in sheet music and lyrics or something like that. So the idea is that he has fallen in love with this voice. It's giving Little Mermaid. He's talking to her about, oh, like this woman is so special and whatever. And she's like, oh, but he probably thinks whoever has that voice is beautiful, like Linda Ronstadt. And so she's like scared to tell him it's her. And then eventually it comes out in a very wild way that I think we can get to when we get to vis-a-vis a police sketch, quote unquote. But yeah. All right.
It's interesting that you said it was giving Little Mermaid, which it definitely is. Like Prince Eric falls in love with the of it all. In my mind, it was giving Cinderella. And instead of having a glass slipper, he has the cassette.
Mm, wonderful. And I guess what we learned from that is that a book can give more than one Disney film at once.
Mm.
Okay, the B plot is that the Sweet Valley High cheerleaders need new uniforms because theirs are old and raggedy and falling apart. And to raise money for this, Jessica has this really, 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 really creative idea. And Robert, you better show respect to this. I love it. She has an idea of like, what's something different we could do? We don't want to do just, the same old thing of like, oh, a car wash or this or that. Okay, I have this great idea. We're going to do a rocking chair relay. What is a rocking chair relay, you may ask? It is when one sits in a rocking chair and absolutely rocks around the clock. Okay, and the cheerleaders, so it's like instead of running a race and giving pledges for running X amount of miles or something like this, they get people to pledge for the hours that they're going to rock, and they're going to do it all night. And it's going to be also a dance. It's going to happen basically in the corner of the, auditorium or wherever. They're going to hold this dance, and the droids are going to perform. And Jessica's then hoping that that can be also a time to reveal the big announcement of the droid song contest winner, and that's going to be another draw. And this is going to give them all the money, and they're going to be able to get uniforms. And basically, she does it, and it's awesome.
So what I want to say that seems like a criticism, but is actually a compliment, is that Jessica's real strength is understanding how incredibly fucking stupid the people around her are.
100%. The peanut butter jelly sandwiches, never forget.
That moved me, but whatever. This is on its face an incredibly stupid idea. Just like an unbelievable, like we're gonna watch you sit in a rocking chair and I'm gonna pay you money for sitting. It is the dumbest idea in the world, and yet she is so smart that she knows that they'll go for it and she makes it work. And I really respect and love that.
It's like marketing and psychology. It's like,
yes.
It's that sometimes dumb is what is wanted.
Yes.
And sometimes dumb is the thing that will have a successful outcome.
Mm-hmm.
And but the whole thing is that it's just novelty. It's just novelty. That's what the good thing is about it, right? And that actually ends up being great.
Yeah.
But I mean, I am imagining you were rolling on the floor laughing. So funny. There's a scene where she's like, well, gotta go. Like, we're going over to Kara's because she has a rocking chair. We have to practice.
It's just really funny. She's so able to like isolate out like the idea of us paying like pledging money for every mile that someone runs is basically just as stupid. And I just love that she's able to be like, this is all dumb. I just want your money. Give me your money. I want a new uniform.
It's a commentary. She's highlighting the arbitrariness of this type of pledge-based donation and charity doing. It's like the same way. It's like, oh, let's have an auction to raise money. It's like, you shouldn't need a thing to give money for. It's a completely arbitrary thing in the first place that you're paying X number of dollars for a mile. One has literally nothing to do with the other. Just if you want to give money to this organization, give money to them. How about we'll save money on peanut butter jelly sandwiches? But exactly. So she's really it's a parody. It's a farce.
Yeah.
She is nothing if not a farcicist.
She's definitely a farcicist. It's a critique of philanthropy, and it's brilliant and insightful. And I, for one, say 12 out of 10.
All right.
Okay.
I mean, I don't have anything to say about the title. I think it's pretty clear. Alone in the Crowd. I think the thing that is different about this book to the others is, the closest we've seen, I think, is Caroline in terms of having no friends and feeling alienated, and you feel uncomfortable in the crowd where everyone else seems to have a spot and you don't. I think Caroline was the closest we saw to that so far. Maybe Roger, but Roger didn't care. He's always just running to whatever. So but this felt much more difficult and painful than Caroline's experience in that sense to me, because I felt like with Caroline, even though she felt, for example, uncomfortable, she had enough, I don't know if it's confidence or enough self willpower, like I don't know, or just it didn't bother her or whatever, that she still would force herself to go to the beach and walk up to people and just try. She will go try to sit down with someone at the cafeteria, and yes, she makes a lot of mistakes and they all are irritated by her, but she doesn't have this sort of total alienation that Lynne is experiencing. And I think what Lynne also has is crippling anxiety, to where the only time she feels comfortable is when there's an hour when she's home alone. And it's like she can do her music, she can eat an apple, and she doesn't have to talk to anyone. Her mom's not home yet. And it's like she just feels comfortable in her space. And like it's so hard to watch her be like in a lunchroom full of people, just trying to focus, just like her head is looking down, she's sitting by herself, she's like just trying to survive lunch because like the librarians won't let her eat lunch in the library. It's just like it's so heartbreaking. And then so yeah, I think then the title is apt in the sense that her loneliness is much more acute than I think anything we've seen.
Can I build on that?
Please.
One of the reasons it's so resonant and so rich and such a studied portrayal of this level of alienation is because it taps into a fairly universal adolescent developmental stage in which we, and I say that because we're both 16-year-old girls, in which we look at those around us and see them all fitting in. And as we are struggling with our own identity development, we often feel that we don't fit in anywhere. And so I think part of why we relate to this so much is that most adolescents at some point between like 13 and 24 have this stage of feeling like, who am I? I don't fit in. Maybe we're not all sitting alone in the lunchroom, but we all feel like we're sitting alone in the lunchroom because there's this like level of adolescent narcissism where we're all only focused on ourselves. And so we only focus on our own sense of loneliness. We all only focus on kind of how we don't fit in, how we weren't invited to that party, how no one is laughing at our jokes, etc. And so there is like a universality to Lynne's experience for most of us. Part of us making faces
that all made sense to me. I mean, I never had the thing of no one's laughing at my jokes like that. I can't imagine what that would be like. Everyone, of course, is always laughing at my jokes, but yeah, that makes sense.
And so I think when you were talking about like Caroline versus Lynne, I actually think Caroline is much less relatable because I think it's a particular personality type who sees their aloneness and is brave enough to go sit at the table and like try to make jokes that no one but Pardo is laughing at. And I actually think that's much less common than the feeling of I'm so alone, I'm just going to sit in my room. And that's why so many, I mean, there's like the joke about like emo adolescents and the idea that they just like listen to sad music and think they're alone. But that is kind of like such a formative experience for so many young people, just kind of focusing on differences and aloneness and isolation because their brains are like developing and figuring shit out, and they're still finding their place in the path unwinding, in the circle of life.
Another aspect of this that I found so powerful is like when her mom is trying to connect to her and she's pushing her mom away, she's putting up this wall, she's refusing to engage. And as she's doing it, she's thinking to herself, like, she just wished she could reach out to her and hug her and cry and tell her everything. Or she couldn't stop herself from like pushing her chin out in this defiant posture. And it was like, yeah, I related to that. And I found it so sad and heartbreaking of like, this girl is so lonely, and her, even her mom trying to help her, she wants to receive the help and she can't figure out how to. It's like despite herself, she pushes it away and she leans into the alienation because that's the only thing she knows how to do, and she's too scared to be vulnerable and all of this stuff. So it reminded me of Runaway, Jessica sort of pushing them away because she wants to connect. And it reminded me also of I think Emily Mayer at one point said something like her dad feeling his love for her or feeling his sadness like hurt even more.
Yeah, I think there is something about the fact that like being isolated is one kind of universal thing, and then to have your mom be like, I see that you're isolated, how do I help? It feels like you're being seen for only the negative things, and it's, I think, very hard to potentially deal with.
Mm. All right, let's get in.
Let's get in. The text opens obviously with what we called the B plot, but I think that there's an argument that the text wants it to be the A plot, which is Jessica talking about how she's come up with the perfect way to raise money for the cheerleaders.
Do you have some analysis of how does this drive the engine of the boat?
I could just talk, but it's not worth it.
This I think is the first book. I have no analysis.
Yeah, none.
Like I have no smart comment on it. I have no side research, like meaning of things. Nope, nothing, none. My notes are just like, I love this.
Yeah, that's funny.
So we're introduced to the rocking chair idea, and we make a little joke about can't Lila Fowler's daddy just pay for it? And Lila says no, because working for money builds character. And everyone's like, well, Lila's never worked a day in her life.
I did think that was interesting. If we read this as a critique of philanthropy and late stage capitalism, this idea that Winston's cracking slyly, how about the Fowler Fund for Uniform Rehabilitation? But his point stands. Your dad has more money than God. Why don't you just do this?
Yeah, well, it's the whole thing of you shouldn't have to like raise a GoFundMe to get basic health care. It's like, yeah, Jessica shouldn't have to rock around the clock just to get her basic needs met, like sexy hot cheerleading uniforms.
Exactly. And honestly, I think we can all agree that a new cheerleading short skirt is much more important than something stupid like basic health care.
What is it? Maslow hierarchy? Is that the one?
Exactly.
The pyramid?
Mm-hmm.
Cheerleading outfits is the first.
It's the very first thing.
So Jessica tells everyone the idea. She's like, it'll be a scream, the most original fundraising event in years. Everyone's like, rocking chairs. Aren't you off your rocker? It's so peculiar. Jessica's like, no, it'll be fun. And she, on the spot, is like, she goes, the others can, she thought for a few moments, have a good time at the party that'll be going on at the same time. We can call it the Rock Around the Clock Relay. Maybe we can get the Joyce to play. It'll be a million times better than a regular dance. And Elizabeth's like, yeah, I do think it's a good idea. Then she tells everyone that they're doing this song contest.
And is there, I guess we'll keep going, but I don't understand the song contest at all.
Oh, no, you know what? We must spend a moment interrogating the song contest. It's a very, very strange premise. Please go ahead.
So the idea is that the droids feel like they'll make it big, but they need one more song. And they feel like someone at Sweet Valley, for some reason, could be the one to write that song. And so they're having people submit songs, as Parda pointed out, via cassette tape. And it just doesn't make any sense at all. Does it?
It doesn't make sense. The idea is that they have the talent, they have some of their own good songs, they can perform, but they want someone to write for them, right? Because they're not saying we're auditioning for a new bandmate. Right. They just want a writer, and then the prize basically is Dana's going to sing it, i.e., unpaid labor from whatever. But that's a whole other critique. But then what doesn't make sense about it is that, well, if you're just looking for the writing and not the singing, why are you getting people to submit the cassette? Because then they're going to be singing. So it's like, why aren't you getting the sheet music and the lyrics if that's just what you want? Like, it doesn't make any sense. And it is also reminiscent of in Love Letters when Jaworski did the playwriting contest, and he said you submit to the playwriting contest by reading it out loud. So they like to have people submit contests for writing by actually speaking it. And I've been sort of simmering on this theory that Collins can't read.
Oh yeah, sure. Go on.
Because he likes to do it, because you know how we talk about like, oh, you could just make a list. and how he has sort of trained Elizabeth to be so inefficient in terms of work by making everything be a synchronous verbal conversation and versus just like writing things down. And I'm like, It also would explain some stuff about what happened when Ken plagiarized Elizabeth's thing and why he didn't realize that actually that obviously wasn't Ken's writing. Because he probably didn't actually read it. And probably what happened was Nora Dalton read it while they were in bed and said, submit this to the newspaper. He said, great. Anyhow, maybe they can't read either. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess for me, it just doesn't. Why would you expect that someone at Sweet Valley High would be the big songwriter that you need, but has never like approached you, or you know what I'm like?
It makes no sense. It makes no sense. It's like saying, I don't know what an analogy would be. It's like I'm a magician. Say I'm a magician and I'm in the magician club at Sweet Valley High. And I'm like, guys, I'm holding a contest for a designer of magic tricks.
Ooh, yeah.
Perform your magic trick that you designed in front of me, and then we'll decide if we're going to take your magic trick design for our act.
Yes.
No.
No.
That was actually such a good analogy. I'm so smart.
By the way, one thing I did like from the text is Jess is like, oh, this is going to be great. This is going to be great. And Liz goes, don't you think you better ask the droids and check with the office about using the gym? And it's like, oh, all of a sudden you know how to plan an event? This is all the stuff she didn't do the last time she tried to plan an event.
Yeah, the generous reading is that Liz is thinking, well, I remember when I was dumb and didn't check that the auditorium was available for the talent show and turned out it was already booked for the PTA meeting. So I'm going to try to have Jessica benefit from my mistakes and remind her to be proactive and do that in advance, even though she didn't say that explicitly.
We then get introduced again to Lynne, and there's this idea that no one knows her name. Winston thinks it's Sherry. Lila comments on how bad her outfit is.
The way the actual narration happens, it must be noted that it's not only that they don't know her name. The book doesn't tell us Lynne Henry, quiet, shy girl, walked around and everyone said, what's her name? The book is reinforcing the not knowing who she is. The book introduces her as a girl who was walking slowly toward her, head lowered. And then they all say, what's her name? Oh, wasn't it Sherry? And then Liz is like, no, it's not Sherry, it's Lynne Henry. It's wild that in a book about Lynne, even the book is introducing her as the girl without a name.
Enid describes Lynne and gives the kind of the richest description. I keep seeing her around, but I couldn't remember her name. She's in 2 of my classes, but she never says a word. She's like a ghost or something. She just kind of drifts in at the last minute, sits really quietly in her seat, and leaves when the bell rings. She never talks to anyone. Now, this was something for me because I have not known Enid to be judgmental. I've not known Enid to say cruel, unkind words about people. And so this made me wonder, because Enid in my mind is like even-keeled Enid. You know, whenever Liz is freaking out, Enid's like, here's some good rational advice. And so I'm wondering, is there another reading in which even-keeled Enid is actually letting us as readers and the rest of the Sweet Valleyites know that Lynne is actually a ghost?
My reading of it actually, Robert, is more just neutral. Like I saw it as just descriptive. She behaves like a sort of non-person. She doesn't talk. She seems kind of out of it. She doesn't engage. It's sort of like a ghost in that sense. Like I didn't see it as, I mean, it's not a nice thing to say, but I didn't see it as like necessarily critical. I saw it more as descriptive. And I think that kind of connects to a theme of like, you know, I was freaking out to you, telling you that a literary reference you had brought up many books prior was actually referenced in this book. And that's a couple pages later when Lynne is in Collins's class, and she perks up when she hears Collins reading lines from the Emily Dickinson poem out loud. I'm nobody. Who are you? Are you nobody too? And Robert brilliantly referenced this in Runaway when Jessica was with Nikki Shepherd.
Yeah, great.
And right? And she went into the gazebo at the party and the lights were off and she said, I didn't think anyone was in here. And he said, no one is, or something. It's just me, or something like that. And you said that they were connecting on being nobodies. And part of what I think Lynne sort of realizes in her makeover journey is that the absence of a choice is a choice, right? And so her choosing to pull a dirty sweatshirt out of the laundry and the worst, dirtiest jeans and not engage with anyone, not engage with herself, and just sort of try to disappear is a choice. And that has certain effects. And there are alternative choices available to her, right? So I think the ghost metaphor is relevant in that sense of like, she is trying to sort of exist as a non-person. She's trying to just disappear because her fear, and I find this also so relatable, is that by quote unquote trying, like trying makes her vulnerable, putting an effort, she thinks that putting any kind of effort into her appearance then is going to draw attention where people are going to think, oh, what, she thinks she looks good now. So she never puts in contact lenses because she's scared that, like, she wants to, she thinks she wants to show off her beautiful eyes, famously her best feature, flecked with gold and they're green, but she can't because she's worried that any bit of drawing attention to herself is going to invite a critical thing.
I was smiling to myself because last night in my grad school class, we were reading Bell Hooks, and Bell Hooks writes about the fact that love is a choice. And we were talking last night in my class, in my seminar, about the idea that we don't often think about love as a choice. That when we interact with other people, we can choose love or choose not to love. And Bell Hooks talks about that love for other people, but she also talks about it as self-love and the idea that you can choose self-love. And I think that really dovetails nicely with your idea that Lynne is acting as if she is not making a choice, but she is choosing not to love herself rather than choosing to love herself.
Yeah, she's also choosing not to receive her mother's love, and she realizes she can try to put herself out there. And, you know, something else that dovetails nicely with what you said, Robert, and I love when we dovetail. It's so nice.
I live to dovetail.
Rather than fighting like so much boxing in a boxing ring, is that, you know, if I understand the Bell Hooks text to which you refer, she also says that love is actions. And one of the themes that we have seen so much in these books is people not understanding why others don't feel loved from them because they say, but we've been through this, you know, I love you. And they aren't then able to hear the other person's pain because they focus on their own feelings. And we saw this from what Stephen said to Jessica in Runaway when they were outside by the pool. And he said, but just, of course I love you, and Liz the same. And how could you think otherwise? Like, so then her feelings aren't valid. And then we also saw it with Mr. Mayer and Emily when Mr. Mayer told Emily, like, Emily, we've been through this. Like, you know, I love you. Like, everything's fine. Like, but what they need to see is that they have to take actions, not just have those feelings.
I love that. I find that what you're talking about really helpful. So Bell Hooks gives us the 5 components of what it means to love: care, commitment, knowledge, responsibility, and trust.
What does the knowledge one mean?
To like know another person or to know yourself. So to like spend the time moving beyond surface connections and to really know and understand the people around you.
Wonderful.
Pardo alluded to the fact that Lynne doesn't want to put on, she doesn't want to wear contacts. She doesn't want to take off her glasses. And Pardo said she was worried that she was inviting critique. I think that's probably part of it. I also feel like she's worried about being seen as someone who is trying, which feels very adolescent to me. Like, I spent so much of my teen years like trying to look like I didn't care when I cared a ton.
I actually do think that. I actually said that, and I actually agree with that, and I actually also really relate to that. But it's also cultural of like, for example, when I work with people in New Zealand, they told me this like expression they have, which is like the tall flower gets cut down or something. I was like, what? They're like, the one who sticks out, no, you're not supposed to stick out. And like other people won't like that. So you're not supposed to think you're special or draw attention to yourself.
We call it tall poppy syndrome, or they call it
Yes,
tall poppy
tall
syndrome.
poppy.
And I know it because they talk about it on Drag Race Down Under, probably, or one of the drag races. They talk about tall poppy syndrome and how you don't want to win too much, because when you win too much, people are focused on you and then you lose. I don't totally know how it applies to this, but I think it's probably there somewhere. And listeners, this is a moment where you could find your own meaning in what Pardo says. She doesn't have to give everything to you.
No, I can connect the dots here. It's the idea that to quote unquote try to make an effort with your appearance is something that is inherently potentially attention that you want to be looked at or something. It's better to blend in than to stick out and fail.
Yes.
That's the connection.
The other thing that we would be remiss if we didn't talk about is the way that Lynne manages her anxiety as she moves through the day. She is just like, she's just like, they say she could practically get through the day as if she were sleepwalking. And sometimes that's what it felt like too. It's just this like kind of dissociating from everything around her is so heartbreaking.
Her anxiety is so severe. I wish she would get she needs to speak to a therapist, because there's a lot of signals of like her heart racing when she's about to just like do these regular things, like get on the bus or go to the lunchroom. And I'm not saying that's not a universal thing or it's pathological or something, but she's going through the day with these severe moments of basically distress, to where her only moment of reprieve is that 1 hour, plus combined with her constant toxic negative self-talk. What she needs is some therapy for her anxiety, and she needs some help with self-compassion and undoing some of this negative self-talk, because she is not only experiencing this anxiety, she's abusing herself all day long. Like she is like abusive to herself in the mirror. She's constantly catastrophizing and mind reading. She needs CBT.
I am a little confused because I think you keep misspeaking, because you mean she needs a hairstylist, not a therapist, right? Those words are close, but they're not the same, Pardo. She needs a hair stylist. Oh, you mean like hair therapy? Therapy is what we call it. Shampoo.
Like I said, a little shampoo goes a long way.
You did say that. She still got a bad taste in her mouth when she remembered the sound of Mr. Collins' sexy voice, reading the Emily Dickinson poem out loud. I'm nobody. Who are you? Are you nobody too? She sat up with a start, shaken out of her daydream, her heart pounding. I'm nobody? Who are you? It was as if Mr. Collins had found her diary and read it out loud. She could have written those lines. It was as if her own inner voice were speaking.
You know what's so gross? So you said, so it says she could remember the sound of Mr. Collins' voice, and you said Mr. Collins' sexy voice, and we had a little haha, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm like, oh, it's so like wouldn't say that. But then in the next paragraph, it describes his rich voice brings the poem to life. I'm like, ew, yeah, they would say that. So yeah, this nobody is inspiring her, kind of strumming her guitar. And I think this and some other experiences that she's had ends up being the inspiration for what's going to be her absolute smash hit on the outside looking in.
There is a moment where the good-looking forward on the basketball team cries out, Lynne? And he's waving. And there is no more like moment. I'm coming, silly. A high-pitched voice behind her called back, and Lynne Jacobs, a sophomore with shiny black hair and a glowing complexion, raced across the cafeteria and linked arms with Keith. Lynne sank back down into her chair, the color draining from her face. She didn't know why she had kidded herself that way. She wasn't Lynne. She was nobody. This is like that moment where you think someone is waving at you, and so you wave back, but they're waving to the person behind you, but like on steroids.
Not only is she saying, oh, I'm nobody, saying she wasn't Lynne almost feels worse. Like, so it says she didn't know why she kidded herself that way. She wasn't Lynne. She was nobody. She wasn't Lynne. not only is it that she's not the Lynne people care about or would ever talk to, again, it's like Enid was right calling her a ghost. She's saying, I don't exist.
Yeah.
This is heartbreaking.
And an important moment about like the call and response that we talk so much about, the naming and the like that interpretive moment.
The hail and the interpolation.
Exactly.
Yes, of course, the anonymity of it all, right? It's she is nobody. The anonymity, she's refusing to inhabit her own existence. That's another dissociation, right? She will not inhabit that social role. She will not be Lynne.
She will not be Lynne.
You know, I know we got to keep it moving, but I do need to pause on the bus, the bus thing at the beginning of chapter 2. We alluded to the fact of Lynne feeling discomfort at the sort of day-to-day social encounters, including the bus, waiting for the bus. And she's watching Caroline and Winston do a little bit. They're just sort of dancing and laughing around. And her heart begins to pound. That's what I was thinking of in terms of the panic and anxiety. And she thinks it was so stupid to make a big deal of something as ordinary as a bus ride home, but she hated riding the bus. It seemed as if everyone else had someone to sit with. I think it's so powerful that the people doing this little bit is Caroline and Winston, because it forces us to remember that Caroline used to be in her position. The fact that Caroline is now casually dancing around and Caroline's now part of the crowd. Caroline isn't alone in the crowd anymore. And like the fact that she can do this casual day-to-day stuff that she before was like, that was her dream. And by the way, we can't forget that when we were initially introduced to her, I think we very casually were mentioned, and it was never followed up on, that she had a crush on Winston.
How could you not have a crush on Winston? She dissociates more. She, on this crowded bus, starts kind of trying to like focus on what she hears in terms of the music of her head and the music of her heart. The start of something, a new song. She just wanted to be a famous songwriter.
She acknowledges her own trope. She talks about how when she was a kid, she thought she could be also a performer, but as she grew older, she realized she would never be on stage. No one would ever applaud her performance. It was one thing to fantasize when she was a kid, an ugly duckling, but this duckling had never turned into a swan. Just an ugly duck, and who wanted to pay to see an ugly duck on stage? It's so cruel. She's so cruel to herself.
Her own negative self-talk so profoundly shapes her vision of the world around her and the way that she understands things that it truly is heartbreaking. This idea that she says, just an ugly duck, and who wanted to pay to see an ugly duck on stage?
These are distortions, right? Where she can only think in extremes. Oh, she's such an ugly duck. It's like, she's maybe a little plain, but prettier than average, probably girl. And maybe she's not a beauty. No one's calling her ugly. And again, of course that shouldn't matter. But given that it does in her world or whatever, just her own self-assessment, it's like, these are the type of distortions that are reinforcing her anxiety, is that she's only letting herself think that she either can like be a star and be beautiful, or like herself, which is a troll. It's like, no, it's okay to be somewhere in the middle.
I think all this is also further exacerbated by the fact that her mother had made a career out of glamour. She was the manager of the Silver Door, an elegant health club in a neighboring town. Day after day, Jade Henry, great name, dealt in beauty, creams, lotions, exercise equipment, saunas, makeovers.
Such a great name. Jade had everything: wit, charm, good looks, a million friends. And I don't know if we've mentioned that her father died when she was little.
We haven't mentioned that at all.
Yeah, and so the one piece of her connection to music is that it's something that connected her to her father. He also was a musician, or not professionally, but always wanted to be a musician. He instilled her with that passion, and that was something they shared. I mean, I think we should describe the description of the physical appearance. Lynne knew she wasn't kidding herself. She was just being objective. I mean, it's dysmorphia. Every time she looked in the mirror, she felt like crying. Oh, this is interesting. Everything about her was so plain. Plain, light brown, kinky hair, a blah-looking complexion. Her nose was a shade too long, her chin a touch too prominent. When all the other girls had filled out in 7th or 8th grade, getting curves in the right places, Lynne had just gotten taller and thinner. I mean, tall poppy over here. She towered over most of the girls in her class, which always made her feel like some kind of freak. No wonder she slumped. Her mother was forever telling her to stand up straight, as if there were nothing wrong with being 5'10" in her stocking feet. It's interesting because like she herself is acknowledging that she isn't ugly.
Right.
She just isn't this like perfect ideal that a bunch of girls, unfortunately, in her high school seem to be. It's like, yeah, she has a real nose, she has a real chin, but she's pretty.
It just seems like she feels like everybody is a sexy baby and she's a monster on the hill, too big to hang out, kind of slowly lurching towards their favorite cities, pierced through the heart, but never killed. That is, of course, a line from Taylor Swift's smash hit Antihero. But it is interesting how this is very Taylor Swift. Like one of Taylor Swift's kind of core insecurities, it seems, is that she was like taller than everybody else and often like tried to hunch down and hide herself.
Oh my God. Teacher,
Yes.
can I?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm
Mr.
being
Collins?
earnest. I'm being actually earnest right now.
Mhm.
She's being a cheerleader. I'm being out here on the bleachers, right?
Yes. Oh, Pardo. Oh, mwah.
I've said before, I'm not a Swiftie. I'm absolutely a Swiftie ally, and I'm a celebrator and lover of the Swiftie communities. Some of my closest friends and families, including yours truly, meaning Robert, are Swifties, and I love the Swifties, and I'm very proud of myself.
You should be thrilled, because I am.
When Lynn's reflecting on how she got her music passion from her father, whatever, her mother doesn't talk about him much, and I just mentioned that once and whatever, and Lynne feels shy about her music around her mother. She had always begged for lessons, but the older she got, the harder it was to play in front of her mother. It seemed as if the magic disappeared the minute anyone else was around. She hadn't even told her mother that she got a job teaching guitar at the music center on Saturday morning. It was her secret, and it was going to stay that way. Let us pause on this. What do you think this is about? To not even tell her mother, like, I got a job teaching guitar. It's like, what is she scared of? You know?
I think
What is
your
this?
question highlights the distortions of her anxiety. Like this is
Yeah.
such a run-of-the-mill thing that would yield no reaction, but she can't process it that way. She can only process it as something that would bring shame and confusion.
Yeah, I guess I'm just, what is that worst case scenario she's even imagining? Like literally, like she says, like what? And just the older she got, the harder it was. I guess it's because, and the magic disappeared when anyone else was around. You know what I think? It's like she can't reconcile her social identity and her interior identity. Her social identity is this shell who tries to be a non-person in order to survive. That's how she's coped. But her interior identity is vulnerable and expressive. When other people are around, she can't sing because those are two different people for her that she's created. Like she has dissociated them, you know?
It's really fascinating. She's walking home. She runs into Guy Chesney. I think it's incredibly telling that he approaches her, says hi, says, "You're Lynne, right? I've seen you around at school, but I don't think we've ever met." This is the first moment that she is interpolated correctly. She says, yes, my name is Lynne Henry. And I think this really points to the underlying message of the text. I don't think this is an ugly duckling becoming a swan. I think this is the idea that some guys like ugly ducklings, and you just need to find the guy who wants your ugly, ugly duck.
Yeah, I think that's beautiful. I love it. He hails her by her name and she responds, yes, my name is Lynne Henry. Altazar said that is literally the moment of interpolation. That's her saying, well, maybe I can be Lynn. It's like when Roger said, put on his suit at the tennis shop and said, God, the limo said, maybe I can get used to this and be Roger Padman. She's like, well, maybe I can be Lynne Henry and talk to a boy or whatever. And he's like, wow, you're interested in music? Most girls aren't. I'm like, rude. I loved it that, so they start talking about music and connecting over this, whatever. And I loved it that he's like talking about what bands he likes or whatever. And she's like, what about female vocalists? I'm like, thank you. There's so many straight men that, in addition to all their other crimes against humanity, only like male musicians and writers and artists and everything else. So thank you for drawing his attention to this line. And then we get Linda Ronstadt.
I mean, he likes the mellow stuff. Linda Ronstadt was my favorite the whole time I was growing up.
Really quick, for me, Linda Ronstadt is such a huge part of this book, and just what the Linda Ronstadt figure over this, like what it conveys or whatever. And I'm curious, like, what is your sense of Linda Ronstadt, or like what she represents, or like what is the semiotics of Linda Ronstadt for you?
My first kind of association with Linda Ronstadt is the smash hit movie musical song Somewhere Out There from Fievel and American Tail. Now, famously, that's her. Famously, you know that my Hebrew name is Fievel. And that in middle school Hebrew class, kids used to say, Fievel goes west and gets eaten by a cat and dies. Very hurtful.
Well, you know that my Hebrew name is Rivka, and in class they used to call me Rivka Bifka, and that was really hurtful.
I didn't know that.
They did. They called me Rivka Bifka.
Wow. I'm sorry.
This is why kids shouldn't have Hebrew names.
That's the lesson.
That's the title of it. Look at so many Nazi followers. We need more Nazi followers. Okay.
Well, we do not need more Nazi followers. Sorry, just to be super clear.
Hey, I don't care where you come from. You know, what do they say?
They don't say that.
Every sinner has a future and every saint has a past.
Sure.
So listen to our podcast. Listen, don't get too involved in the comments, but if you want to take a listen, I'm not stopping you. I'm sorry, Linda Ronstadt.
So I knew her mostly as a duettist because she also sang Don't Know Much. And then I guess I knew her stuff with Dolly Parton and Emmylou Harris. And that's kind of where I entered into this.
If you had 5 words, literally, of like someone who's never heard of Linda Ronstadt, like what is the association? What is the vibe? What is the aesthetic?
Cool, hip. I don't know. I don't know anything.
I was just curious of your perception, because I'll tell you, for me, this was my origin. This was my reference of Linda Ronstadt.
Oh,
like this book made me know the word Linda Ronstadt. So I never like knew her music, or if I did, I didn't know that I knew it. I was just listening to some earlier to try to see what I knew, which was not much. But so my sort of imagined vibes from her was 70s folky. And then in the book, they describe her as always having a sort of deep, throaty voice. So I was expecting that. But then when I listened to the music today, it didn't sound that deep, I thought. But it's, I guess, just a sort of velvety richness of sort of with the like brown turtleneck in the 70s of it all. Maybe she's wearing a bell-bottom brown corduroy or something like this on stage. And her hair's, you know, I saw in the pictures, her hair's this sort of messy, wavy, kind of sexy with the bangs. So that kind of chill vibes.
So that's the Linda Ronstadt of it all. And then Linda Ronstadt becomes this like figure for the two of them, importantly.
This is really important. He talks about how he loves Linda Ronstadt, and then he rattles off all the things he likes about the singer, the richness of her voice, her lyrics, her range. And then later, when Lynn is trying to remember what he said he liked about Linda Ronstadt, she's like, I think he must have said the way she looks. So that'll be important later. Then she has her moment of reprieve, home alone, eating a sandwich.
Love a sandwich. And then we have this interesting moment. The chapter ends. She's playing her guitar. Guy, she said aloud, a flush coming to her cheeks as she pronounced his name for the first time. There's something about being seen and being named and being known.
Well, saying it aloud, it's a moment, I guess, of acknowledging to herself. It's a disclosure to herself, I think, and a moment of allowing herself to put it out there, even in a quiet room of only her and her. Beautiful.
And it gets at kind of the similar feelings to not wanting to wear contacts. It's the same thing, like admitting that she wants to be pretty, but she can't be pretty. Admitting that she likes guy, but she can't have guy.
Lynne, I think we're getting a vibe of feeling a little bit harassed or, being woken up by her mom. And how can a healthy teenager sleep late like you?
When we know that teenagers need more sleep than basically any other age group. That's actually not true, but teenagers need a lot of sleep.
Yeah, and it's actually so rude that school starts so early because of like farming times, and we're actually not doing farming right now. So actually kids should be allowed to freaking sleep in so their brains can work.
Agreed.
And Lynn has a moment of like, God damn it, not only am I sleeping late and mom wouldn't understand that I was up late bringing my guitar, but my mom is looking so stunning in crisp white cotton jeans and a black silk t-shirt, and Lynn can't even imagine owning anything white because she would make such a mess of it. And again, we get the embodiment of the sort of perceived unfitness for society of the physical clumsiness. We are reminded of on the bike trip, we had Barry. We're reminded, of course, of Robin. I mean, Caroline, even, I remember she was kicking the sand too much just by her walking, and the other girls managed to not kick the sand. Lynn always mind reads and goes to the worst possible thing of like, they're thinking something bad about me. Her mom's like, get dressed, I have breakfast ready. And Lynn's like, okay, I'm coming down. And she assumes from her mom's frown that she's sort of resisting saying something. And she thinks she probably wants to tell me to take some time with my appearance. I mean, it doesn't end up being true, but she is always thinking the worst. Like, I think this fact of her grabbing this, she grabs the sweatshirt robe that she'd rescued from the box her mother had been about to send to the Salvation Army is so potent. Number one, it's just a symbol of their struggle. And just the fact of her mom saying this is not fit for wear is like itself triggers her. So whether it's fit for wear or not, she's then going to go put it on. So it's like there's a defensiveness, right? But also it's like, she's not just doing the neutral thing and grabbing any sweatshirt. She's specifically grabbing the one that has been designated unfit. It's like, in other words, it's like, you can wear casual sweatshirt stuff and not care that much about glam or appearance and like still look tidy and good. You know what I mean? There is something in between like caring a lot about clothes and like making that a big thing versus like literally taking dirty laundry out of the hamper and like clothes that aren't in good shape anymore and like choosing to put that on. You know what I'm saying? It's like you could just land somewhere in the middle, girl. So
it's also like a hallmark of adolescent thinking to be very, very binary. Like it is harder to understand nuance at 16 than it is at 26 and 36 and 46 and 56. And so I think there's partially some of that as well. That's why I think this is such an accurate, rich picture.
It's so realistic. But again, with the cruelness of the self-talk, she looks in the mirror and she says, pathetic, truly pathetic, Lynne Henry. You're too ugly to be human. Christ almighty. The mother says, I want to take you to the Silver Door, which is her salon. And I want Rhoda to do something with your hair. And Lynn says, no. And the mother says, Lynn, you're making a statement to other people with the way you look. You're telling them you don't care about yourself. If you just take a little bit of time, ... What do you think about that, Robert?
That sounds like something every mother has said to every daughter at some point, and it sucks.
So I guess what I'm saying is, what do you think she should say? If anything, like, what do you think?
I think there's a way to approach this with a little bit more love. I think there's a way to kind of say, hey, Lynn, one thing that I've kind of noticed is sometimes you move through the world as if taking up any little bit of space is not something you deserve to do. And I just want to talk to you about like what you deserve and what you're worth and the idea that you taking up space is not a bad thing.
I think it's helpful to think about what she deserves. And I think that signals also compassion and care. So I think that's helpful. But I get what she's going for in terms of you're telling them you don't care about yourself, because like I get what she's trying to say. I guess what I'm saying is this is a really, really tricky conversation, and it's really, I don't think there's a lot of things she could say that Lynne wouldn't feel defensive.
Mhm.
Okay, and then she goes, "It isn't just your hair or clothes. I'm worried about you. Your grades haven't been as good as they could be either. If I haven't woken you up, you might have overslept." And Lynne thinks to herself, she's right. My grades are bad. I know I could be doing better. But Lynne liked staying in the background. Why should she make an effort when it was so much easier to just be average? So how do you think her mom should have framed this?
This feels like a pile-on that is not particularly helpful.
She says, "Honey, I'm worried about you," right? So I think she's trying to tell her she's worried about her, that she's not, it's not just about, "Oh, I don't think your appearance isn't good. I'm worried about you. Are you okay?" Like, I think she is trying to, like, she's coming from a kind place with that, I think. And it's not, like, I think that's what she's trying to signal with, "I'm worried about you." Even though obviously Lynn is hearing criticism, which she is criticizing, I guess, but it's like, that's a pretty delicate line to, like, what would you say here?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's hard. I think one thing I want to kind of highlight for you is that you're focusing on the like care that her mother clearly has. And I think that's definitely true in there. But I don't think that Lynn is in a place to receive this kind of messaging this kind of way.
Oh, for sure. I'm not saying Lynn should have received that. I guess I'm more interested from the mother's perspective. What should a parent say? I'm just more curious about that. Sorry.
I think foregrounding the fact that what we see is that Lynn is treating herself as if she is not worthy, that Lynn is treating herself as if she doesn't deserve to be seen, to be known, to be talked to.
But what if Lynn then says, like, because I feel like her response would be, "It's not that, I just don't care. Like, aren't I allowed to wear what I want, look what I want? Like, shouldn't appearance not matter? Like, I shouldn't be judged by my appearance. Like, if I think this is fine, this is fine." So,
but I think you as Lynn are still kind of responding to what Mom in the book said and not what Mama Robert said. Because I'm not talking about your appearance, sweetheart.
what are you talking about, mommy?
Thank you for calling me mommy. I'm talking about kind of the way that you move through the world, the way that you talk to people or
Move
don't
through the
talk to
world?
people.
What is this language? Sounds like from 2000s or something like this. Can you say that in a way I might understand?
Sweetheart,
Yes, mommy. Mommy Jade.
I like that. I think that sometimes I can remember when I was your age, a young girl of just 16. And when I was a young girl of just 16, I didn't want anyone to look at me. I didn't want anyone to notice me. I was so worried that people would see me as not enough or see me as not good or see me as wrong in some way.
What, so you're saying, what? I don't think I'm not enough, not good, wrong. What are you saying? Like, why are you telling me this? What are you saying? I'm not enough, think I'm not enough, not good? Well, I
Man,
just don't care. I think sweatshirts is a fine way to dress. And what?
I think what might be better is if I'm going to write you a note that you can read on your own time, because it feels like you're maybe not ready to hear what I'm trying to say. And you may be listening with your ears, sweetheart, but it doesn't feel like you're listening with your heart.
What are you saying? You're gonna write me a letter? We obviously don't have email.
I'm going to write you a letter. I'm going to sign it, Love,
Okay,
Mommy Jade.
great. Leave it somewhere. I'm not gonna read it. I like my
Yeah.
sweatshirts.
I mean, this is one of the many reasons I do not have teenage daughters. 'Cause
Okay. Another moment with Guy Chesney.
he again starts the interaction by screaming her name and then crossing to join her.
You're the only person at the school who knows her name. It's crazy.
So they're having this great conversation. They're talking to each other. One thing that's interesting to me is she really likes how open he is, how forthright he is with his feelings. Best of all, he didn't press her or ask her questions. And she's spinning this as like a great thing. And it's just kind of funny to me that what she's basically saying is he doesn't seem to show that much of an interest in me, which isn't really what's happening, but it's kind of a funny thing.
Yeah, there were some lines that I clung to where I tried to, where the story I told myself with this is that, so she says, a guy didn't ask her anything, yet he listened carefully to everything she had to say. And I really clung to that and the fact that she felt comfortable. And I hoped that what that meant was he's intuiting that she's very private and shy and that asking her questions may bring some discomfort. And so he's maybe intuiting from the way she's engaging with him and the fact that she's asking him questions and seems to enjoy hearing about the music. And that's actually seems to be breaking out of her shell. And so he's maybe actually really understanding that that's maybe how they're going to start to build enough trust that maybe she'll be open to share about herself ultimately. So that's the reading I would like to give it.
Yes, I agree with that reading. We are not even a quarter of the way through the book. So I'm wondering if we want to.
Yeah, like I have very few notes, like like.
I have very few notes, but I will be talking for 20 minutes at a go about every single quotation.
I'm sorry, but this book is too rich. Okay, fine. Blah, blah, blah. They're going to the lake for some baseball, and Lynn ends up getting a ride with the droids and hanging out with Guy. And Liz is observing how engaged she is, talking to Guy, and Liz thinks, what a difference. Lynn and Guy bond. She starts telling him a bit about how she's a little bit shy and doesn't like crowds and about how her father died. He tells her he thinks he's going to go to Juilliard. LOL.
She's having this fantasy about what it'll be like when she's a famous singer and she's with Guy.
And again, about the naming. She pictures, okay, this is wild. Just the way her brain works. It starts by she pictures him. Next to him, in a glittery white dress, the singer who made the group's success possible, Lynne Henry. So she's identifying with her own self in fantasy, right?
They get to kiss. It's very sweet. And then Lynn's reverie is interrupted by Dana Larson calling out Guy or Guy, who knows. Dana says, we've got to announce the song contest.
They announce it. They say, for some reason, there is a week to do this, which is some sort of very arbitrary rushedness of this.
She thinks, I would love to do this, but I can't. I'm on the outside looking in. Ooh, that sounds like a song title. And then she realizes she can't deal with anybody hearing her sing on tape or live. And so she is going to put her name, she's not going to put her name on the cassette. She'll be anonymous. This is the quote that gave me my 6-word summary. People wrote anonymous poems, anonymous letters to the editor, anonymous graffiti. Why couldn't she write an anonymous song? It was the mask that was going to allow Lynne Henry to show everyone what she was really about, which is like that Oscar Wilde quote, man is least himself when he talks as known as in his own person. Give him a mask and he will tell you the truth. The other thing that I thought was kind of interesting is it was going to be a really special song too. It was going to be written for all of the nobodies out there, for anyone who knew what it felt like to be anonymous when everyone else had a name, for anyone who had ever known what it was like to be on the outside looking in. She recognizes that she's not alone in her loneliness, that other people feel similarly.
Yeah, but because the internet doesn't exist yet, she is limited to her own like geographical whatever community of Sweet Valley and can't hang out with these people and make friends online. So she can't meet them. So what she could do is go to Comic-Con. So she does this.
Yeah, I wish she had a Tumblr. This reminds me of Message in a Bottle, not the Taylor Swift song from The Vault, but the Police song. Do you know this song?
Message in a bottle.
Absolutely.
Message in a bottle.
It's all about like sending out a message to the world. And the last verse is, walked out this morning. I don't believe what I saw. 100 billion bottles washed up on the shore. Seems I'm not alone in being alone. 100 billion castaways looking for a home.
Yeah, it's like that really bad movie I watched about a replica who wakes up in a pod. And she's like, oh no, I'm out in outer space and in my little pod. But then she finds out there's 10,000 pods next to her and everyone's out in their own little pods trapped in outer space. A bunch of nobodies all together, 10,000 of them. And they're really nobodies because they're not people. They're robots. A simulacra, as it were. All right,
as it were.
So now Lynn's mom is trying to connect with her, I think, in a bit gentler way, a little bit closer to what you were hoping for. Lynn tells her she was at Second Lake and Mrs. Henry's like, oh, it's so beautiful there. Did you? She hesitated, like she's trying to think of the right way to word what she wanted to
Mhm.
ask. She doesn't want to say, like, did you have friends there? Did you talk to people? Right? She doesn't want to put pressure. So she goes, did you have a good time? It's she's trying, and then she's like, I don't want to pry, but are you finding it any easier at school now? Like, I think that is a more compassionate way to go into it.
Mhm.
Like, she's trying.
And she says, don't you think I know how it feels to be lonely?
Hmm.
Which is really interesting to me because she's crying, and I think she's crying for a couple of different reasons. But one of the things, I think we'd be remiss if we didn't think about the fact that she is a widow.
Hmm. So her mother's crying, and Lynn stares at her. I don't know what you're talking about. She said dully. Her throat ached. She didn't know why she acted like such a brat around her mother. She loved her with all her heart. Her mother was all she
Mm.
had. She couldn't bring herself to do anything her mother asked. And then she continues to speak woodenly and be like, I don't know what you're talking about. Oh, I guess I'm just a big zero. And her mom tries. She says, no, you're not a zero. I just think you're unhappy. I want to help you. Don't shut me out. So she is trying to have the compassionate response. But still, Lynn can't accept it. And then the brutal, the runaway of it all. Her mom says, I guess I should leave you alone if you want to just work on your song. Lynn felt like crying. She didn't want her mother to go. She wanted to put her arms around her and weep her heart out on her shoulder. She wanted to tell her all about Guy and how confused she had been feeling, but she couldn't. I guess you should, she said dully, watching with a face of stone while her mother crossed the room and shut the door.
Mm. And I
But,
think
from pain comes art. And then we get the masterpiece.
she records the tape, she labels it anonymous, and she says, but it was better this way. She tried to reassure herself. Being anonymous meant no glory, no recognition, but it also meant no risk of pain. And she wasn't going to risk being hurt, not for anything in the world, not even for Guy Chesney.
Lynn submits her song. Then they're all outside. The droids are hanging out by a tree and people are hanging out around them and they're just playing the tapes out loud outside and all listening to them. And that's an interesting way to do that.
Yeah. And certainly does not respect the artist's privacy or feelings about their art, but whatever.
And then they're like, hey, what's this? There's one more. It's marked anonymous. I wonder what that means. Well, guess there's no name on it. Well, guess let's just put it in and see what it is. And then they have spines prickling and haunting melodies pours out the tape player. And Elizabeth couldn't believe anyone her own age could have written a song with so much maturity, such deep and poignant feeling. And they're all freaking out.
Day after day, I'm feeling kind of lonely. Day after day, it's him and him only. Something in his eyes made my hopes start to rise, but he's part of a world that doesn't include me. Nothing he says could ever delude me. I'll never win. This is how it's always been. I'm on the outside, looking in. Night after night, I'm saying a prayer. Night after night, that someone will care, somebody to hear me, someone to stay near me. But nothing's going to change. Dreams can't deceive me. I'm all alone. You've got to believe me. I just can't win. This is how it's always been. I'm on the outside, looking in.
A hush falls over the group. They're like, that's the one. Everyone buzzes with excitement and speculates. How are we going to find it? And Guy says, I've got to find the girl who wrote this song.
And I have to respect the bravery of Kate and Francine, because so often in books about works of art, they don't include the works of art. Even in these texts, they haven't, but like very often it'll be like somebody's writing a poem and you never get to see the poem or whatever. And I'm impressed that they felt brave enough to include the lyrics to the song, especially when the lyrics are bad. And I think that's really, really brave of them.
Then we get a moment of Mr. Collins has some kind words for Lynn vis-a-vis her apparently natural talent for writing about her paper about the Emily Dickinson poem. And he says, well, do you ever write poetry or anything? And she's like, no, but she thinks, well, songs aren't exactly poems, are they? And he's like, well, if you ever do, you should share with me. I'd be delighted to read it. And she says, thanks, I'm glad you think it's okay. And he says, it's more than okay. Lynn, one of these days you're going to realize that you're more than okay too. And you know something? I really hope I'm around to see the look on your face when you figure that out. Her eyes fill with tears.
Then she starts wondering if she shouldn't take her mother up on her offer for a day at the Silver Door. Maybe she should risk it and try wearing her contact lenses and doing something with her hair. Guy is talking to her again and says, like, you've got to hear this girl. She gives me chills. She's awesome. I want to play it over and over again. I just can't get it out of my mind. The lyrics are gorgeous. If I could only find this girl and tell her what I think of her. Which I think is interesting because it's not even what I think about her song. It's like what I think about her.
Lynne says, I wonder what she's like, averting her eyes. And I think we can interpret the averting her eyes as bracing herself for what his imagination of what she's like is.
Mhm.
And then his description is, I have a feeling she's intense, terrific, not like anybody else. Imagine what it would be like to play backup for her. It would be a dream, like playing for Linda Ronstadt. Lynne felt her mouth go dry. Guy probably thought this girl looked like Linda Ronstadt too. Someone really special, he said. She didn't have to think too hard to imagine what that meant. Someone curvy, lithe, beautiful. Someone who would look as good on stage as she sounded. And so this perception motivates her to even double down on staying anonymous.
Mhm.
All right, beach disco.
There's a dance. Guy is still trying to find this mysterious singer.
Guy sort of impresses upon Liz how much he is invested in this and how much he cares. And Liz is like, I think he's in love. And then we get Lynne.
Lynne is sitting upstairs in her bedroom. She's looking at all of these different glamour and beauty magazines, each with a different suggestion. How to organize your closet, how to tone your thighs, how to highlight your hair, how to make your cheekbones look higher. It was mystifying, part of a world that Lynne had always refused to consider. And this was kind of giving me the America Ferrera speech in the Barbie movie, which famously Pardo did not see all of. But this idea of what is required of modern women. But she also finds that it's kind of fun.
She tweezes her eyebrows, it hurts, and she sneezes, but her eyes look bigger than usual and farther apart. She looks at some of the fashion advice from the magazines and she sort of decides that what she's been wearing is awful. And she goes to the back of her closet of the stuff her mom gets her on Christmas that she always refuses to wear, and she decides to open it. And she says, you know what, this stuff's flashier than I'm used to, but according to the magazine, it might just work. She tries it on and it's amazing. And there's a royal blue print jumpsuit that she wears over a t-shirt, tied a sash over her waist, plus earrings. You know, not sure about the accessories, but we'll go with it.
Coco Chanel family said, add one more thing before you leave the house.
Exactly. It is, I think, a powerful moment that when the mom gets home, Lynne feels nervous. Her hands are trembling and she doesn't want her mom to see her like this. She's actually scared for her mom to see that she has just tried this stuff on. That's how vulnerable she feels to even make any effort of her appearance that her mom's been telling her to do, that like she's even scared for her mom to see that. And then her mom comes in and is so supportive and excited. And it's just a really sweet moment. Lynne is crying, don't laugh, I just want to try. And her mom's like, oh, sweetheart. She gives her a hug. You look wonderful and I would never laugh at you. And her mom's like, and Lynne's like, I want to try. I don't want to be a mess. And her mom's like, well, of course you can come to the salon, but you're not a mess. You're special. And then her mom says the thing of, that's much more important than coming to the silver door. What matters is feeling good about yourself, really good about yourself, and being able to see your strengths and talents as much as your weaknesses. You know what I'm saying? And Lynne
I
says
do.
yes. So now she's ready to make some changes.
Then Liz goes to the record store. She overhears like a
Because the
music
record store is
lesson.
in the music center.
Yeah.
So she hears Lynne singing, realizes she's the phantom singer. Lynne tells her, don't tell anyone I'm so insecure. I don't look like Linda Ronstadt. Liz is like, okay, fine, I won't tell anyone. The rock around the clock relay is basically lit.
How could it not be?
And then Lynne gets the salon makeover at the Silver Door. She bonds more with her mother. They talk more about the father. Mrs. Henry is basically supportive of Lynne and her music and says, now tell me about this Guy Chesney, as she takes out the blow dryer. I'm like, that's awesome. And then Guy's like, Liz, you gotta help me. Who is it? And Liz is like, well, I can't tell you, even though I actually do know.
Why?
then
Why
she's
would
like-
she say that?
because she actually knows that she's telling him and she wants to tell him. So because then what happens is she quote unquote accidentally drops a clue. My reading is this wasn't an accident, okay?
Oh,
Because she's like,
interesting.
because she goes, listen, I want to help you, but the girl, the mystery songwriter, made me promise not to tell anyone who she is, and I can't go back on my word. I feel too terrible. She's someone really, really shy, and I think she's worried. She's self-conscious about her appearance. She thinks that people are expecting Linda Ronstadt or something. And then he's like, Linda Ronstadt, snaps his fingers and is like, thanks a lot. And she's like, whoa, what had she said? So I'm kind of like, not, I mean, she obviously couldn't have necessarily astral projected into the conversation of Guy Chesney and Lynne Henry vis-a-vis Linda Ronstadt, but it's a pretty specific detail. She knows they've bonded about music. There's a good chance.
Yeah. I don't
Plus
know.
the shyness. Her main characteristic is being shy, and he obviously knows her. They've been talking. I'm just like, I don't know. All right. Now we have the shadow bringing out her eyes. She went to sauna, manicure, exercise, makeup, and skincare lessons. God knows what that entails.
Yeah, the exercise. I was like, what?
And she's like, I look great. And her mom's like, I wish it was as easy to make you feel wonderful inside. I want you to feel good about yourself. And she's like, well, I'm trying. And she's happy in another sash. And then we get to the really weird thing where she's walking to school with Guy. And he's like, you look nice. She's like, thanks. And he's like, guess what? We actually solved the mystery of the anonymous singer. My dad has a friend who's a terrific artist. Don't know why we had to give him a name of Charlie Porter. He's a police artist. He draws these pictures they use in police stations and on the news, you know, from someone's description. And she's like, phew. So he doesn't know it's me. And he's like, last night I played the tape for this police sketch artist. I've heard it so many times and I've thought about the singer so much that I was able to describe her to him perfectly. Every detail, the hair, the eyes, da-da-da-da. But it's going to be a surprise. You can't see it. Liz is going to help me photocopy a flyer that we're going to distribute at lunch today with an exclusive story to announce the mystery songwriter. I mean, this is crazy for so many reasons, but I know we're on a time crunch, so why don't you go ahead?
No, I want to hear why is it crazy?
Well, he for some reason has 100% confidence that the fantasy he's conjured is going to resemble her actual appearance, right? Now, of course, this is the story he's telling to Lynne.
Yeah.
But I mean,
okay.
from Lynne's, but so I'm talking from Lynne's perspective, right? This is the most insane thing you've ever heard. Oh, you hear a song and you think you could just conjure what the person looks like. So you go tell a police artist and then we're going to distribute it to the school and we've decided that's who it is and that's going to be someone we know. Okay. But you know, what she doesn't know is that he, of course, has figured out that it's her. And I guess has given the police artist the photo of her? I don't know.
No.
And so she's like, you're crazy about this girl, I guess. And he's like, yes, I am. And she's like, oh no, we're gonna be all getting a flyer of Linda Ronstadt, and that's not gonna be good. And then guess what happens?
What?
At lunchtime,
Uh-huh.
she's actually in the cafeteria being sad.
Okay.
And Liz Wakefield shows up. And Lynn's like, Liz, I heard you're distributing a flyer. And Liz is like, yeah, we are, but Lynne, how did he know? As she walks away perplexed. And Lynn's like, how did he know what? And then as she's wondering this to herself, she gets engulfed of people saying, good for you. Congratulations. You are the phantom singer. And wow, that's great. And she says, how did they know? And then she sees the flyer. Mystery songwriter wins contest underneath. Over a beautifully printed copy of her song was an artist's careful rendering of her own face. Guy had described her to his friend in perfect detail, soft unruly hair, almond shaped eyes, even the ugly ass stubborn chin, expression halfway between dreaminess and laughter. It was her own face, not the old Lynne Henry, but the way she imagined herself if she closed her eyes and tried to conjure up her own image, i.e. with no glasses. And suddenly she's happy. The droids have an emergency concert at the cafeteria. She jumps up and sings. She and Guy have a wonderful kiss. He says, I love you. They woke up from a dream, and that was where real happiness began, right there in the real world in each other's arms. I'm trying to go fast because I know you've got a time crunch.
No, I know. This is truly the idea that he's in love with her because he heard this song a bunch is wild.
That's the mermaid of it.
That's the mermaid of it, or the Prince Charming of it. There's a big part of this book that kind of, I think, is asking us to interrogate anonymity and whether anyone should ever be allowed to be anonymous. Because it feels like the standpoint of this book is like, no, if you create art, we need to know who you are because who you are is so important to the art that you create.
Yeah, like remember when Ken Matthews, without his consent, was gonna have his famously plagiarized essay, The New Kid, published in the Oracle, even though he specifically did not get his consent. And now they're photocopying a picture of this apparently girl's face who said she doesn't want to be identified. It's rude.
It's rude. It's wrong.
All right, now we're at the beach and we get the cliffhanger, which is Amy Sutton's coming back to town.
Yeah, I don't
Amy Sutton's
care.
Amy Sutton is Liz's old friend. She, by the way, is in Sweet Valley Twins.
Oh.
And
So that's why I care.
basically the point of this is that Liz is so thrilled, she's too excited to notice the frown on Enid's face. Enid had been Elizabeth's best friend for a long, long time, but obviously not as long as Amy Sutton. And Enid couldn't help wondering if Elizabeth was going to have any time left for her. Will Elizabeth's renewed friendship with Amy Sutton leave Enid stranded? Find out in Sweet Valley High number 29. Bitter Rivals. Then we got Malibu Summer, so I don't know which one's first.
Bitter Rivals is before Malibu Summer.
And I will be a bitter rival to any listener who, after listening to this glorious podcast, does not immediately open their app and rate with the 5 stars. That's the most important thing. You should also leave a wonderful review, but absolutely get in there and rate. If you're not subscribed, I don't know what to tell you at this point.
And the other thing we would ask is that we know that isolation is difficult, and we don't want anyone to feel like they're alone in their love of Sweet Valley or in their love of like deeply serious takes about deeply stupid things. And so share this podcast with them. Text it to them. Send them the link. Get them involved. Get them listening. Bring more people into your own private hell that is listening to me and Pardo talk.
All right. Leave.
Okay.
Stop.
Love
Wait.
you.
Fine. Bye. Love you. Bye.
What were you going to say?
No, I just want to talk.
Oh, there's no time to talk. I need to.
Fine, bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to Sweet Valley Hive, hosted by Robert Marks and Rebecca Pardo. For more, check out our Instagram at Sweet Valley Hive. Theme song by Yessie and artwork by Elliot Carroll.